This is where the business say, we invested lots in your company to create a product, but now it's not giving us revenue. Why? Because you didn't do a proper discovery.
Bad discovery very much is ticking the box, and all it does is create some documents.
You are looking from the lens of the technical point of view, but what about the management, the company point of view?
Biggest cost savings have always come from being able to scale opportunities.
If you do not plan, then you are planning to fail. That's what I think about discovery.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Disruptors. Ashish, it's good to have you on. We're doing it a bit differently this week. Normally Ritesh is hosting and I'm on there, but good to have you on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, excited to go through our chat, so appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you've obviously been with us for a long time and had a lot of experience across the different roles with business analyst, and now you're leading up our operations, done a lot of stuff around the projects and everything. What I wanted to discuss really today was, I think, something that we've had a lot of discussions about across the years, discovery, and how important it is to get it right from the beginning and make sure that we set a solid foundation for the project from there. So yeah, I guess kicking straight off into it, why don't you give us a bit of an idea of your thoughts on what discovery is?
Okay. So talking about my experience, previously I thought discovery was just focused to feature. We'll go to client, we'll ask what are the features that you want, we'll note it down, we'll create user story and develop it. But once we had a couple of on-site discovery workshop, then I realized, okay, it's not about feature, but it's about the vision that they are looking after and the problem they want to solve. So rather than us being completely focused on features and having a blinders, we have the open spectrum where they discuss the problem. We again have multiple questions to follow that up and looking beyond what they are showing us. So rather than just focusing on what they are talking about, we go behind that, what was the actual cause of that problem and trying to solve it. So that's the real discovery rather than being confined with the features. So that's what I have learned from my discovery phase.
Yeah, I agree. I think from my perspective, discovery is moving from feature-based outcomes to outcome-based outcomes, essentially, which is essentially, rather than us focusing on the features, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to deliver, this is what we want here, this is what we want there. It's where do we want to get the business? What's this initiative trying to achieve? From obviously using our PSV thinking, how do we increase profitability, how do we enable scale, and how do we build enterprise value, but then breaking those down into specific actionable outcomes across each one of those pillars for this initiative, for the business or whatever that we're working towards. But so many people still think in features and they still talk in features. Everything talks in features rather than the actual outcome that we're trying to achieve. Now, don't get us wrong. Clearly, we've still got to talk about features, right? We've still got to know exactly what we're trying to do. We've got to get clear and on the same page. But if we have features without kind of the outcomes, then what are we doing the features for? And we can't ask the right questions about the features, trim the features down, add more things in, etc., because we don't understand the overall picture. We don't actually understand what we're trying to achieve, right? And I think it's important, as you said, it's that learning process you go through with clients, and it's important for us to understand, and even if clients are working, or individuals, anyone listening that are working on this themselves, is that focus, get clear on the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Don't start with, oh, this is the tool we're going to implement, or this is the tool we're going to build, or this is the feature that we need. That might spark an idea, but then go, we need to strip it back to this is what we need to achieve from an outcome perspective, I guess. What do you say on that?
Yeah, because client do not know what they exactly want. And if you start with feature, okay, you want this feature, that feature, then again, they will be confined and say, yes, I want that, and no, I don't want that. But rather than we pointing them to a specific domain, we lay out a free white paper where they can draw, okay, these are my current problems, and I expect my company to go here by solving this. Then it's now our responsibility to take those talks, those discussion, and then lay out in a proper format. Yes, the outcome will again be feature driven, but it's from where we came. Rather than coming from feature to development, it's coming from vision to feature and then development. So it also gives them idea about, okay, they are talking about this thing, what if we do this? So it again sparks them too rather than us also. So yeah, I think that's the good thing that brings when you do a proper discovery.
Yeah, yeah, and we know that the challenges, right, of when we do superficial discovery or we don't go deep enough, we don't go clear enough into the problems, is we've seen it time and again with projects that we even haven't worked on necessarily. We've seen it with projects that we have worked on where mistakes been made with not getting on the same page. But more importantly, we've had a lot of people come to us and things and that with failed projects, and typically it comes back to misaligned expectations and not enough discovery, right? Is that fair to say?
Yep. Because here we call it North Star. So if you are heading towards one North Star and we are as a development team are heading towards the star, then it's likely that we'll achieve it. But when we are assuming it, when we are pretending that you know everything about the company, then you are chasing different North Star and they are chasing different North Star. So that is creating the misalignment. And with the projects that comes to us, we feel that, and we have also experienced that. Also, not in the project that the client come to us, but with our earlier project, we made same mistake. We were going totally on the features. We were assuming, oh, this is that. The client were expecting it, and later when we were on the production, then okay, this is not what I asked. Then we started finding the root cause analysis and found that okay, this all have been started from the discovery. So yes, if you start your day with the misalignment, then ultimately you are going to end up in a different completely place. So yeah, I totally agree on that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's, for me, it's a super important part, because even we know that through experience, as you say, and learning this over the time, but often clients or whoever, stakeholders, let's just stop saying clients. I think stakeholders is the key word here. But stakeholders don't even know what they want themselves, and can't necessarily even articulate it without somewhat being a therapist, right, to a degree, where you're working with them, helping them to work out what they want exactly and work out exactly what's needed and diagnose. They may know the symptom, they may know a bit of the problem, but we can't pinpoint exactly the solution, right? They may think the solution, they talk the solution in features, but understandably, those stakeholders don't necessarily have the domain experience across, all of the technical side, the experience with other projects, other industries, etc., where we go, okay, we see the outcome you're trying to get to. Here's the best way to get there. There's a very big difference between doing that to, again, as we've discussed, but taking a wish list or a feature and going, oh yeah, we can do that. Here's how we can do it. Because as we know, even that, it's a very, what's the word? It's a very minimal scenario, or it's a very narrowed mindset is what I'm looking for. A very narrowed mindset of, because as we know, there's always like 30 ways, 50 ways, 100 ways we could do something, right? In the projects that we're working on. And there's never a perfect way necessarily, but there's the right way, right? In regards to, this is the direction that we need to be taking this. And to me, I just feel it's often overlooked. And then, I don't know, it's just, would you agree? What would you say about, is it in the heat of the moment? Is it people like, they're so eager to get started on the project, they're so keen, everyone's had this idea, they've had this shiny object, right? They've seen all these cool things and they want to do this, and they jump in and they want to move forward and they want to do this, and they just go ahead. But we often don't see those issues. It's a bit like, it's probably a bit of a dark way to talk about it, or a bit of a dark way to look at it. It's a bit like cancer, right? It doesn't necessarily show up until later on. I don't have a better way to describe it at the moment, but we don't necessarily see those issues until later on, right?
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Because as a human, we always chase for something tangible. For example, a stakeholder come to us, I need this application, then they immediately want something tangible. For example, the UI portion or the actual development, but what they are missing is the plan, the roadmap on how to reach there. So this is a boring part. To be honest, the discovery is very boring because it's talking, writing this and that, and at the end you are just getting 100 pages of documents that do not excite the actual stakeholder, because at that time they see, okay, if I'm investing in right direction, where I'm getting a correct ROI or not. But again, if we look at the lens of PSV, it's very important because that guides you whether you want to go towards the profitability or scale or building your enterprise value. You need to start it. So since we have done a lot of discoveries, what I think is there is lack of education with the industry that discovery is very important, because there has been false impression created by other vendors that, oh yeah, we can do this easily, we can code it, and they code it 200 hours at the starting and when they start developing it's 2000 hours. And what is the reason? Because they didn't do the discovery. We also did the same, but again with our 40cx framework we learned, we refined it, and then now we give them brains, we give them 200 to 400 and we complete in 300. So that's meeting the expectation and without being derailed from what they were originally envisioned. So it's our responsibility as a vendor to educate them why discovery is important. It might sound boring, but always, if you do not plan, then you are planning to fail. So that's what I think about discovery.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point. I think one thing, interesting point you raised there was talking about the education of people, stakeholders. Even for us, it's clients, but there's stakeholders that we work with clients as well. But is that often, even when discovery is important, they look at discovery as like this thing that's just ticking boxes, right? Or completing a checklist. And it's so far from the truth. There's like discovery, bad discovery, and there's good discovery, right? Let's call it that. And bad discovery very much is checking the box, ticking the box, filling out the form, whatever we want to call it. It's superficial, it's box ticking, and all it does is create some documents. Good discovery is understanding the outcome, looking at that, working out what that outcome is, and then finding the pathway of how we need to get there. For example, we can digitize a process, a bad process, and that might be bad discovery. That, oh yeah, here's the wish list, these are the features, this is what we want to do, thanks. A good discovery is where we go in somewhere and we go, what do you want to achieve? Let's not talk about the process even yet. Let's not talk about that. What, from a business perspective, where are you trying to get to? Not just like, oh, we want to increase our profit. Oh, we want to be at this size. Yeah, that's fine. But more importantly, take me into the specifics of that, right? What are we looking at from an operations perspective? What are we looking at from a process perspective? But then challenging them and saying, well, have you ever thought about doing this? Or we need to maybe change this up. Or why do we need that? And I want to get your experience here from real world stuff that we've done. But you know that moment I'm talking about, I hope, where you can see the light bulb flick, or you can see someone go, oh, I'd never thought about it like that. Or now that I've said that, we had this, I think, from one of our clients just the other day. This was on a smaller thing, but they said, oh, actually now I've said it out loud, I don't even think we need it, right? And we could have just easily taken that originally at face value and said, oh yeah, no worries, we'll do it. This is how many hours and we're just going to get it implemented. But now we're implementing the right solution, a good solution, rather than just taking on that bad discovery, if that's the way you want to put it. So what do you say about bad discovery versus good discovery?
Yeah, we had a similar experience. So with one of our clients, they came to me and gave me the list of items that needs to be done. And they said they exactly need this. But when I asked them follow-up question, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? Then at last they completely changed what they were asking for. So they thought that they were doing a good discovery and giving me all the list of requirements. But again, they were not thinking from the scalability point of view, from the actual need point of view. And when I asked them follow-up question, yeah, okay, why do we need this? We don't need it. Also, with recently, just a couple of weeks ago, client said that, okay, I need this learning center feature. And then when I asked for which user are you particularly talking about, can you please run me through what's your idea behind this particular feature? Then there were a couple of stakeholders and they thought for a moment and said, oh, we don't need it, let's remove it. Again, that is called good discovery. But for example, if they email me that and I say, yeah, it will take us 100 hours to do that, and here is your code, and we take the money, we develop it, and guess what, 2 months down the line, no one is using it.
Yeah, and they're unhappy, right?
Unhappy. From the vendor perspective, yes, we earned that money, but again, did it create value to our customer? No, that's not the point. So yeah,
And also, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a good example, but I think there's even further and deeper than that because it's not just about, okay, us earning money and getting the feature done. That's one scenario where we do a feature, they pay for it and it doesn't get used. That's one scenario. There's another scenario where we do a feature that is meant to be used, but it's done in the wrong way. It wasn't clear. And then they blame us necessarily because we haven't done even though we got poor requirements and things. And this is a two-way street. We've got to do our best job to get that discovery and do everything we can. They've got to do their best job to give us the information that we need as well, right? Because it is a two-way street. And we're only as good as the information you share with us. Now, we can try and pry the information out of you and ask the right questions, which is exactly our job. And unfortunately, most of the people in our space don't even do that, right? But that's our job. Our job is to read between the lines, often how I call it, read between the lines and ask those questions. But you've still got to share that information with us. You've got to give us the background knowledge, the context, so we can make the best decision. But then we need to read between the lines once we've got that information and go, okay, here's what we need to do. But to me, there's just so much misalignment there with the discovery. And yeah, it just causes so many issues down the track, disagreements with stakeholders, disagreements here, there, and everywhere. Where had we just focused, had we just took a breath and spent more time on the discovery, as you say, but then coming back to our PSV thinking is this going to increase profitability? If so, how, right? Is it going to save costs or help us generate more revenue? If so, specifically, what are the outcomes we're targeting? How's that going to work? Same thing on the second one, on scale. So how's this going to enable us to scale? How do we either keep our headcount but double the business, 10x the business? Or how do we create repeatable digitized systems that aren't going to break at scale? How's this going to contribute to that? And the final one is the enterprise value, right? How do we build enterprise value? How is this specifically from an outcome perspective going to build that enterprise value? And it's really building a business case, I guess, is the way to put that. You're building out a business case. You're building out, it's forcing you to think the right way. And not a lot of people like it, I guess, because it's forcing a change of thinking. But is that suddenly, I don't know, how's your experience been going through that process, working with clients where, does it make you think differently? What does it bring up, the whole PSV thinking and trying to build out that? It challenges assumptions, I guess.
yeah. So when I started doing discovery, I only thought about the feature, only thought about the technical aspect of everything, and only used to ask, okay, what about this? What about that? But again, you taught me, okay, you are looking from the lens of the technical point of view, but what about the management, the company point of view? Then we introduced PSV. So now what we are creating is a business case. So if you go with the solution, your profit increases, your scale, you give your brand a value, the enterprise value. So what it does is it creates us a picture about, okay, what we need to build so that we get that. And the client also see, okay, if we invest this much amount in this particular company, then we are getting this in return. So we are aiming towards one North Star. So that's the more important part, rather than we think about what are the technology that we are going to use, how do you scale on the server rather than scaling on the business. So we are ultimately forcing client to think on that way as well. So they are not thinking about how to scale, how to earn money. They are just thinking, okay, they said that they are going to use Laravel, so I need to think, okay, Laravel is good option or not. And we are forcing them to think about that. But now it completely changed. We are not asking them those technical questions because that's our responsibility. Now we are asking them, okay, we have listed ABC features. Do you want to do all at right now? Because if you do that, then your profit would be relatively less. But if you do A and B in this current MVP and then prioritize C on the next one, then you scale more. So we have that complete picture, and also we can advocate what are the features that they require on the MVP based on the PSV thinking. So that is the most important thing that I take it from those PSV lenses.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it's not, we obviously use it and it's the framework that we've come up with, but I think it's important that it's really moving from, as we said, features-based to outcomes-based digital transformation. That's, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And so many people still are features based rather than outcomes based, and they end up implementing so many features trying to get to an outcome instead of focusing on the outcome and reverse engineering back from that. And it sounds simple when you say it, and everyone says, yeah, of course we're focusing on the outcomes, but they're not. When you challenge it, when you start to actually challenge it critically, there's holes start appearing, right? Things start cracking, doubts start coming up, and it's like, yeah, this is the point, this is why we're raising this. And there's a humongous difference between working with a vendor, a team, a partner, whatever way you want to put it, whether it's internally, externally, it doesn't matter. But there's a humongous difference working with a team that thinks through outcome-focused digital transformation to feature-based or systems-based digital transformation. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, you can start talking where you've got people that implement a certain system. The same principle applies. The only system they're going to implement for you is that system. And the only thing they're going to do is try and just mass mold that system to work into your old workflows, or vice versa. Mass bend, mold your workflows, whatever, to work to that system. There's no actual discovery of, okay, how do we go digital? How do we transform digitally? And what is the most intelligent way to do that, right? It's just, let's do this feature. Let's release this particular thing. And to me, so much of it is we're just missing the fundamental point of that outcomes. And you mentioned as well that, we're talking about investment, we're talking about all this kind of thing. I agree with that. But that's a result of focusing on the right things, right? That's a result of focusing on those three key pillars at PSV, which gives us that end result anyway. I want to move on. We've got a lot to discuss here, but I think we've had some good conversations already, or good conversation. It's been fantastic. It's good having you on. But the next thing I want to touch off on was like agile versus waterfall, and not getting into the whole methodology discussion, the whole project management thing discussion, more around the fact of how we approach discovery and just sharing our experience for the, for anyone listening for benefit, but is really about the fact of our philosophy, I think in a nutshell, would be we have to get the foundation right. We have to focus on that foundation. We need to know the destination. Then we can be agile about how we get there, right? Is that a right way to put it?
Yeah, because what I listen is people often take waterfall as in a negative way, and we need to do agile, but you need to gauge the situation, because without the proper foundation, proper discovery work, there is no agile. Again, you'll be completely agile and you'll be not delivering anything because you don't have the base. So you need to have a strong foundation, and we have the discovery phase here. And yes, it's waterfall because we do the discovery first, we identify what are the things that we want, and when we move into the design and development, again we introduce agile where we can make changes, but the base, the north star is there, because to build anything we need north star. So again, if you call that waterfall model old school methodology, then that's a wrong way to look at it, because at least you need to have something, you need to have the destination. So to find destination, you need to discover that.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And long gone are the days, well, within reason, now we've got AI and investors with that, but where you have some far-flung idea and you get a mass amount of investment with a mass amount of runway and you just start building, right? Because we know how inefficient that is. When there is no coordinate, it's not rocket science, is it, right? When there's no coordination, when there's no plan, we're not going to get where we need to get, right? Now, we've got to, as we say, we've got to have that North Star, that plan. And this is where, again, I think our approach is we're not necessarily saying every single little technical thing is documented and architected and everything else in the discovery phase. No, that's not what we're talking about. Again, we're moving from feature-based to outcome-based. But we need to know the destination. Because if you don't know the destination, how do you know the road to get there? Or how do you build the road to get there, right? And that's really the whole point around the design, the development, and introducing those agile principles into what we do with that comes into play. But we have to, on the discovery phase, especially for the projects we're working on. I'm not saying this applies to every single thing. There are unique scenarios where you've got startups and investments, etc., where they're kind of trying to find a product market fit and stuff. That's not what we're talking about. But to be honest, I think the appetite for that level of spending and investment is very much toned down these days. But that's not what we're talking about anyway. Our focus is really helping larger enterprises in their digital transformation, process and their journey. And our big thing is helping them build edge factors, their digital ecosystem. And I guess to sum it up, our foundational belief is that if you have your own digital ecosystem, it's not that you don't use other tools, but if you have the backbone of your business, your operating system, your ecosystem, where you own it, you own the data, and is the central nervous system of the business, those businesses, not only in the past, but those businesses with where we're going now in the future, are going to be the ones that lead the industry, especially with AI and everything else that is coming into play. And we're seeing how quickly things are evolving with AI, and even talking about discovery. We've tested products with, people are spinning up their own SaaS or whatever else with Lovable and these other products, etc. Again, the bar is just going to shift higher, right? Because when suddenly there's no, personally, I think we're a long way from AI taking over the level of discovery that we're talking about, right? If that makes sense. And again, you've tested these things. I've tested these things, having spent a long amount of time with it. There's a difference between creating something that everyone else has to creating something that leads the industry. And that is genuinely something that involves, as we know, this discovery, this amount of work. And it involves flipping things on its head, testing things, thinking, as we often say, like a chess player, we're thinking 15 steps ahead, 15 moves ahead. And that's just why this is so important. And I think coming back to that, or the original point, I want to get your further comments on this as well, but is with the agile waterfall, let's not get into the full discussion about the methodologies, but we have to know, right, where we're going in order to build that road to get there.
Yeah, because in the service industry where we are working, the resources are limited. You have the limited time, you have the limited budget to spend. So if you go all agile, then eventually those resources will end and you'll have nothing. So we have to have a plan, we have to have a North Star, we have to have a destination, and that is bounded by our resources. So again, if you are working in a product based industry where you are experimenting and you have tons and tons of money to invest, but then yes, completely agile would be fine. But in the service industry, once we do the discovery, the client asks, okay, what is the budget, what is the timeline? Because we have encountered that lots and lot. So this is why, because they need to also plan, they need to also allocate budget. So we cannot say, oh, we'll just develop it and every sprint will charge you, but we don't know when that will be delivered or anything else. So that's not how things go in this industry. So in this industry, yes, you need to have a proper discovery. Let's say waterfall, we do discovery, we lock that, then we again go to design based on the user stories that we created on the discovery phase. We design, but again in the design we'll bring clients, we'll discuss, we'll test the design and then iterate, and we make changes. Yes, so within waterfall, in the small run, we are doing agile. It's a feedback loop. Agile means adapting easily. So we are not rigid here. We say, yeah, you like red color yesterday, if you want to change to green, we can do that. But once that is done, we lock the user stories, we lock the design. Now it's development. So in development, we try to have less feedback because it's costly. The main reason why project fails are rework. You have constant scope creep, so that's why we are not reaching it. So that's why being totally agile, being very much flexible leads you to nothing. So we need to have a waterfall, but again, a smart project manager would introduce agile, the flexibility in between, so that we are catering to anything and we are delivering the actual product to client within the resource that we made. So yes, if you look at from the optimized point of view, then waterfall is good. But if you have unlimited resources, then let's go agile, because why not? Everyone loves to spend money and create something that they like. But again, but again, you need to
Just the
stay
real
within
world
the
doesn't
budget.
do that.
Doesn't do that, yeah, because the no clients comes to us. Okay, we'll give you millions and millions. You create anything, you deliver whenever you want. So that's not how things work. So yes, there will be constant debate between agile and waterfall, and we have a lot of discussion with Ritesh about you guys don't do agile, and yes, I say that we do agile, but we do not say we are completely agile, but based on the situation we are agile.
Yeah, correct. And I don't think, I believe, again, we fundamentally have to have that discovery right. And without turning this into an agile waterfall discussion, really, it's just more the point is that if you don't know where you're going, how do you know how to get there? You don't. And it's not about laying out every architectural piece of information. Again, it's where in my opinion, it's moving from waterfall. Back in the day, was the discovery would take 6-12 months where they'd literally specify every single thing before anything was designed or built. That's changed, right? And that's why I believe, to be honest, it's not just a waterfall discovery. It's more the fact we're moving. It's a mindset thing from features and all that to what outcomes we're trying to get. Yes, we'll look at user stories. Yes, we'll look at the solution architecture and everything else, but these are agile, they are flexible, they aren't rigid, they are subject to be improved and adapted as we go throughout the phases. But we have to have some goal, right? We have to have the 80-20 rule, because we have to know where we're going in order to build that road to get there, I guess. For me, really, and this is just to sum it up, in we've talked about this a bit and I want to discuss it a little bit further now, but for me, when we get to the discovery phase, and I often tell this with stakeholders or clients that we're potentially working with, is I want you to be able to say, why are we spending this money, and have just any clear, validated backed answer to say, this makes sense. This is an investment for the business and we're going to do this. There's a big difference between that simple answer to that question versus, oh, we want to know exactly the feature and exactly the tech stack that we're going to be using and exactly this, which all those things are important. And we even say that. But more important than that, that is a result of the outcome that we're trying to achieve, right? And why are we investing this money? What are we going to get out of it? So I guess on those three pillars, that just a recap is the profitability one. We've seen this before in businesses, is that it's a process thing. How do we help them save costs and or increase their revenue? And to me, this is kind of linked with the scalability one, with increasing revenue and things. But honestly, the biggest opportunity, and this is what we discover, I guess, in businesses, and I'd like your comments on this. For me personally, we find cost savings, don't we? Right? We find cost savings in the discovery and things where we can improve processes, we can reduce the need, personnel, or the need for further hiring, whatever it is. But for me, the biggest cost savings have always come from being able to scale opportunities or relationships, right? Whether that's reducing churn of relationships or scaling the amount of quotes, scaling the amount of proposals, or scaling the amount of clients that we can deal with without the increasing headcount. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's less, people often purely focus on how do we save costs versus where's the opportunity that we can capitalize on, because saving costs might save you 10%. Let's just say that, for example. The opportunities of what you can build might be 4 times the business, right? There's a huge difference.
Yeah, I also agree that we need to look after profitability, but again, if you are looking for scale, then with scale the profitability follows you. So if you are catering to 10 customers with your old school methodology, and if you introduce a software that helps you cater 100, then again your profitability is already increasing. So you constantly should look after how do I scale, because again, when you, because it's all about the multiplication, the compounding. So if you cater to more customer, if you sell more, then you are getting more. So that's, I think, with all the PSV, I like the scale portion more, being a little biased on that, because if you scale, then other two variables are automatically increasing. Not in every situation, but if you scale, then there is less chance that you are not increasing your profitability. So I like scale.
Yeah, I get you. My big one I focus on, it's interesting, this conversation, is enterprise value in the discovery of, like, saying the other two they're all very important, but most often the enterprise value one is overlooked. And the reason for that is people just don't think about it. And they don't think about having their own systems. They don't think about their data being scattered across however many different systems, and about owning their own intellectual property, their own systems. And they see it, to sum it up, they see the investment in the engineering or the development of the code or the actual building the application, all of that kind of thing. They all see that as an expense rather than an investment, because mostly it is an expense because they're focusing on doing things that just aren't getting the return. This is the point. So it's not just you need to think it's an investment rather than expense. We need to actually prove it as an investment. We need to make it an investment. And that's a really important one for me. But I guess another one for any leaders or anyone listening out there, and I'd like to share your experience on this as well, Ashish, but I know I've seen it firsthand. Leaders or anyone, get out there in the business, understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis, speak with the team, speak with the people on the front line, what's actually happening. Now, obviously, there's things that we know this from ourselves of what we're trying to do with Intuji OS and other clients and projects that we worked on, where the team, the leadership, etc., may see things that the rest of the team don't see of where the business is going and what they want it to do. Yes, totally agree with that, and we take that all into account. But it still doesn't replace the need to get on the ground, not only with your own team, but get on the ground with your own stakeholders. There are so many solutions. Even just take this simple one with customers. How many solutions have been built for customers without even customers being talked to? Sounds ironic, but so many of them, even ourselves, come across, like we ask them, have you spoken with customers? Or is it, have you got any kind of research you've done or anything? Like, oh, nah, we just know this. We know this was what they want. How much of that have you seen?
Recently.
Well, how much have you seen though? That's a lot though, right? Even recently.
Lot. Yeah. With the current project that I'm looking after, yeah, we did a lot of discovery. We talk with the stakeholders. Yeah, we need this feature, this feature, this feature. And when we roll out, guess what? The feature that we most emphasis on was not useful, because the one they were using was 50-year-old lady. So she was having a lot trouble to navigate between the pages. It was too complicated. Yes, if you look at the top view, it is a wonderful feature. But again, who is using it? If she can't use that feature, then you cannot say that's a wonderful feature. So yes, we often make mistake because we are not looking at our audience. We are creating a pant for a 6 foot long guy, but again, we are not taking proper measurement. We are not asking for feedback. We are not giving them a trial version, and that is creating a lot of issue. And this is where the business say, we invested lots in your company to create a product, but now it's not giving us revenue. Why? Because you didn't do a proper discovery. Yes, we sat in the round table for 5 days. We discussed with all your CFOs, CTOs, but they are not one who is going to use the application. The one that are using the application are sitting in the mining fields or sitting in the schools or the clinics, and we have not asked them a single question. Then there's your answer.
Yeah, and it could be even team members on the ground, right? It could be team members in the factory floors. It could be team members out in the field. It could be customers, distributors, partners, certifiers, whatever we want to call them, whatever the different stakeholders are and that we've worked with, is that it's it is more important for us, and not only us, but when we're talking about giving advice to people that are working on this discovery and things, is that get on the ground, speak with the users. And we often have this saying of design with the stakeholders, not for them. And it's so important because, yeah, we know we've had these issues ourselves. We've run into these issues. And that's why we've introduced PSV thinking. That's why we look at all these things through this lens, and why we challenge clients. But we know this as well. Even when we challenge clients, sometimes we've challenged stakeholders. They still want a feature. They still want something, and that's their choice, right? They sometimes know things that we don't know. And at the end of the day, sometimes, and this is especially in the environments we work in with, you got a business environment, you got different things. Sometimes what a feature for one client is worth it, right? Because of the amount that client is worth and things like that there. So it does differentiate a bit, but just as we said, like, get on the ground, talk with the stakeholders, figure out what they're trying to do, figure out what they want. But as part of that, we can't just ask them what they want, right? We've got to read between the lines, because there's oftentimes they'll tell us things that if we just took it at face value, we'll end up in a worse position, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because if you talk with 10 people, then they'll give hundreds of features, and if you start creating it, then it's a mess. So to iterate what you just said, I call it illusion of understanding. So if you sit in the decks, do some Google and see, oh, this persona requests this features, and start building it, then that's not going to work. You need to go to ground, you need to talk with them, you need to mirror them. We often say that you need to mirror the day, you need to shadow them, you need to understand how they are using the application, how they are doing their work, and based on that particular information, you come back and do your further research rather than looking at the case studies or the research paper. Yes, it was for that sample space, that sample size, but again, you are dealing with different customers. So yes, you need to go on ground, talk, communicate, explain what they want, learn, and then properly disseminate what you understand. And if you are on the same page, then developing a software is not a rocket science.
Yeah. Yeah, we often say this, it's the discovery that's the hard bit, working out what we actually need to do in the outcomes focus. How do we need to get there? And that's the hard, it's not that the rest of it isn't difficult, right? And there isn't stuff to do. There obviously is, but it's, if we don't know where we've got to work out what we've got to do to achieve those outcomes. That's the difficult bit. How do we actually build something that genuinely achieves those outcomes for the businesses, right? If you had one thing that you would say that most leaders get wrong about discovery, what would you say?
They know everything. Because, for example, if you sit with the leadership team, then, for example, there are 5 leaders. They think that they understand everything. If there are 20 people working under them, they understand that, okay, I know every 20 people, how they use the system. I know every problem, but that's wrong. Because you have a lot of things going in your head and you have the illusion that you know everyone, but no. That's why you need to talk. You need to get, because the one that are using the system or will use the system will give you a real problem, rather than you sitting way up in the hierarchy and expecting that you know all. So that's not what I think. Yes, you understand it on the surface level, but if you are trying to resolve a problem, then you need to dive deep.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Couldn't agree more on that particular point. Is that, and it's the same principle applies to myself, you, and everyone else, even with our own work that we're doing, is that challenge your own assumptions and don't just think that you understand everything, because that's where we make mistakes and we move forward like, yep, we want to do this, this, and this, and we want to get it done. But I think it's been a fantastic conversation. And to wrap up, I think just for everyone listening, is that prioritize discovery and prioritize not just superficial kind of insights. Get to the bottom of the outcomes you're trying to achieve across the different stakeholders. What stakeholder wants what? How do we get that? Then how do we find the middle ground? Suddenly you start to see patterns appearing, right? Things that come up repeatedly, things that are happening repeatedly, things that we need to fix. But how do we get to that outcome? Focus on those outcomes for each from one of those stakeholders. Put it together as a business case from that PSV thinking. You'll start to really get yourself in a better position to move forward with confidence over against being shaky and not even realizing, oh, should we do this? Should we not do this? Where do we go from here? And too many people do that.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Ashish.
It was a good chat.
And appreciate you coming on. Good to have you on for the first time, and no doubt you'll be on here again at some point as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Disruptors. If you are serious about unlocking your ace factor, the thing that sets your business apart and helps it grow sustainably, don't forget to follow, share, and leave a quick review. We will be back next week with more real-world insights and no flop conversations. on how to rethink your systems, modernize operations, and build value that lasts. Until then, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep disrupting.